Hi, my name is Nived, as Coach Joe just introduced me as, and today I'm here to talk about, how can you get involved in preventing suicides in your high school and throughout your state and throughout everywhere, because it's a big problem, and I'm going to get into it right now. So you might be asking to yourself, well, why is it a problem? Well, you've heard about it, I'm sure you have, but it's a problem because it's been rising. High school itself is designed to be stressful. It's designed to put you through the rigors of life. Students are students. They're still young, their brains are still developing, they're still going through puberty, and as a result, they react to things differently, more brashly than they should. And it's very easy for them to get depressed, and that depression ends up getting compounded and compounded and compounded until they could seriously consider suicide, and many commit suicide. In fact, it's staggering because 20% of students in high school have seriously considered suicide. 20% of students in high school haven't considered much, but the fact that they're considering ending their lives before it has really gotten started is scary. In fact, it's the third leading cause of death in high schools. But suicides are actually really preventable. 70% of students who commit suicide let off the signs. And in my school is particularly competitive, as I'm sure a lot of yours are. And whenever a student committed suicide due to like stress, I know one student who failed their Keystone exams, which is a very big, which is the way that you have to graduate here in PA. If you finish Algebra 1, you have to take a Keystone exam. And they ended up failing that exam and they took their own life. And it wasn't immediate. They were thinking about it for a while and they committed suicide. And when I talked when I talked to the friends of that person, it was I wish I knew. I wish I had seen those signs. Let's change that. Let's make sure that kids see those signs. And suicide prevention is taught in our health classes, but it doesn't really work. This is something I talked about with my health teachers. It's something they're completely frustrated about. Students don't really pay attention in health class. Students don't really care. When in health class, they slack off, a lot of them sleep because they treat it as a free A rather than as a learning lesson. So, one thing that I've been working on is to make students more engaged in learning about the signs of suicide so that they can see it in their peers. How to get involved. So, the first way is through the suicide symposium, which is what Coach Joe just explained. Yeah, and symposium is a hard word. I mean, it's a scary word, but it's just a conference about a subject. So, it's where you just explain, have discussions with other people about suicide prevention. And we're going to be at these suicide preventions, you're going to be talking about what the symptoms of suicide are and how to see them in other people so that we can all be active members in deflating suicide. Here's how you create one. So the first thing you have to do is get in contact with relevant authority. For us, it's a principal. If you go to a private school, it might be a headmaster. But here, you speak to them about what the idea is. I'm trying to make sure that I'm trying to create a symposium about suicide so that so that students don't feel as depressed. When I presented this to my principal, he was all ears. He's like, "Yeah, you want the library? Sure." Because at the end of the day, you will never meet a teacher who doesn't care about their students in some way. You'll never meet an administrator who doesn't care about their students in some way. So they do everything they can, but they're so stretched that there's not much they can do. So taking initiative and talking to your principal, talking to the relevant authority gets you their support. They're going to market it for you. They're going to help you get the relevant authorities to help you. It's like this, getting in contact with professionals. You're not going to be the only one talking at these symposiums usually. Usually there will be someone there with you. Like I tried to have my health teacher at one of these. They understand suicide because they've been trained in it, and teaching it, engaging, where kids are actually paying attention at a suicide symposium rather than in a health class, rather than a different environment, it'll go a long way. And don't forget that although this seems like a lot of work, one student saved is worth all of this trouble. And the third thing is getting people to show up. So for these suicide symposiums, you actually need to market them a bit. So it's part of it is word of mouth. Part of it is distributing flyers across the school. Like put it here. You want snacks? Come to the suicide symposium. third period, library. Kids will come. A lot of kids will stay. A lot of kids will come for the snacks, but that's okay. And then marketing your event through teachers and social media is probably the best way to get involved. I work at clubs in my high school, and the best way I've seen students get involved is just marketing it on social media. And then your teachers, if they're aware of it, they're going to tell students about it. And then your principal, getting your principal on board, he's going to market it too. He's going to put it in his, we have like weekly emails from our principal. I'm sure he'll put it in there. And then once you've created the symposium, it's about making that impact. So while you're there, create the materials. Make an impactful slideshow about the statistics, why we need to get involved, why the numbers are so high, and how you can see the signs. Encourage people who are on the edge to seek proper resources where they can find them. And that's where your guests come into play. Your guests are going to want to help their friends. There is not a friend who wants to see their friends suffer. Then he's not a real friend. My friends have seen me teetering and have tried to help and have tried to help me. They told me to go to the office, talk to someone. They told me to talk to a teacher, talk to a friend, calm down. But that only works if a student knows what the signs are. And once you've done all this, congrats. You've done the hard work and we laud you for it. But there can still be more to be done. Ask the students in this symposium whether they would be interested in creating it throughout public settings, not just high schools, but in gatherings and in we have like meets here, like Hindu group meets, Christian group meets, or where all these religions meet. If they would like to speak to their relevant groups about this type of topic, teach them, mentor them, direct them to the right authority. And the second way is something that I'm very familiar with. It's directly advocating for change. So this is where my experiences come into play. If you see the pictures on the right, I recently spoke at the Philadelphia Board of Education meeting about how there's a need for different ways of considering suicide, different ways of considering suicide prevention. As I've said before, administrators and teachers all want to help, but because they're teaching 25 kids every class and then having at least 6 to 8 classes about it, it's hopeless. Teachers are not going to see the signs in students unless the student approaches them. But students don't approach. They get clouded in their own thoughts, which is something that we can change. So the first thing that I did was I was asked as a member of a council to consider why kids are committing suicide so much, and I came up with the plan and understood the reasons to be that kids don't pay attention. Kids don't see the signs in their fellow students, and that's a problem because the signs are, I'm gonna kill myself. What's that? What's the difference between a joke and actually meaning it? It's hard to see, but when we teach students, it'll be easy to see. Then I approached the Philadelphia Board of Education about my proposal, and I'm currently working with the board member to implement interactive suicide prevention strategies in the school district. So what that means is a lot of school districts have talks with people who have been close to committing suicide or have family members who have committed suicide, but what I've noticed is kids skip them and kids don't really pay attention to them because it's an auditorium. My class has 450 kids in it. If I see a guy on a stage talking to all 450 of us, it doesn't really mean anything to me. It doesn't really mean anything to me because his case is so isolated. But when he's talking to me in a closer setting, like in a health class, that lesson sticks with me because if I'm having a talk with him, it's not just about a free A, it's about learning. So we can teach kids to learn the proper strategies. And then here are the 3 ways that you can directly advocate for change. So the first way is the way I did, which is one of the many ways I did was asking my principal to connect. I know you talked about it. I know we talked about it with the suicide symposium already, but here asking your principal about the idea that you have and then telling them you would like to talk to a relevant authority about it, like your health curriculum leader. There's always going to be someone in the administration who creates the health curriculum who manages the health curriculum. And so talk to this person about making health classes more interactive. Having direct talks with people actually decreases it. That's something I've actually had discussions with about, because the health curriculum leader who I talked to asked me, "Can you please get more data? Can we please get more of an understanding about how to make health class more engaging?" And that's something I spent a lot of time doing this summer, talking to students from other districts and asking them, "How would you like health class to be more engaging? Do you feel like you're actually learning something?" And the vast majority of responses I got was no. That's something we can change. And the second one is testifying to your school board about how the problem can be best solved and the best way to do it. So the way I did my thing was I got in contact with the people who organized the testifications at the school board, and I made a speech and I spoke to them for about 3.5 minutes, not necessarily tearing apart them, not necessarily saying that what they were doing was wrong and everything they said was wrong, but that we can add on to it and then save lives at basically no additional cost. And this is probably the way that gets you the most connections. And this is the way that I've seen actually gets a lot of work done as well, because it puts you in direct contact with the superintendent. And parents always react to that type of thing. Parents are always listening to like what other students are saying while they're testifying. So while I was testifying in Philadelphia School Board, a lot of people behind me were saying, "Amen, thank you." And a lot of people were backing it. That actually put a lot of pressure on the board to talk to me after, because a couple board members came up to me after and asked me what my idea was and how we can help and how they can help me. These school board members always want to help. And then the third is creating an advocacy group with students. This is like this is the way this is probably the way that'll get you the most support, because if you create a group of like-minded students in your high school and advocate for change, it's worked throughout history. The civil rights movement, the LGBTQ plus movement, the AIDS movement, it's worked. The hippie movement. It's a strategy that always works, because administrators are always going to listen to something that a vast majority of students believe, as long as it's not outlandish, and this is not outlandish. And it'll make your teachers and student leaders more likely to listen to you. So I want to summarize all the points. Doing these activities isn't necessarily easy, but it will pay off for you in the end. While it does look good on a college app, it really does, because suicide is not necessarily something that's touched on beyond just the surface. Going deep inside of it like this and actually working to ensure that suicides don't happen rather than just volunteering, it'll look great. Being a leader is what you want, but it's more than just college. Advocating now will teach you valuable skills when you grow up. It'll teach you public speaking. It'll teach you how to connect with people who are significantly more advanced than you. There are going to be people more advanced than you in the idea of suicide prevention. But talking to those relevant authorities, getting their opinions, pestering them, it'll help you in the real world. Because for example, when you're in college and you want an internship, you are talking to people who are more advanced than you. And a lot of the time, they're going to ghost you. So how are you going to follow up with them? How are you going to ensure that you're going to get that internship? How are you going to ensure that you're going to get that job? Students, I know this seems like a lot of work, and it is. It's not easy, but I promise you that for every life, that even if you save just one life, even if you just help one student who's teetering on the edge, you've succeeded. You have. And is there any questions about this?